Hey everybody, welcome to another video. This almost never happened, this video. I picked these two dressers up from an estate sale, sight unseen, online, and when I went to go get them, they almost didn't come home with me. In fact, I probably would have left them except that, like I said, it was an estate sale. The house was now empty. They were kind enough to leave these in the shed for me because I couldn't come get them the same day as the estate sale, so I was kind of stuck with them. They are a lot rougher, really, than the video is showing. For some reason, it's not really showing, but the worst part about these was the mouse poop. It was mouse poop in all the drawers, mouse pee, dirt, grime, no bugs, mind you. That would have been a deal breaker for sure, but yeah, these were gross. My name is Angie and I refinish furniture. Sometimes I paint and sometimes I don't, but I always do what I can to save old pieces from the trash. Welcome to my workroom. Let me just start off by saying you guys are going to see me do some things here that I do not recommend doing. I hesitated to even put it in the video, but I felt like it wouldn't be authentic if I didn't show you exactly what I did. So brace yourselves and don't do what I do. So as mentioned, these two dressers were absolutely filthy. I'm using a heavy-duty degreaser cleaner and a scrub brush. I am spraying that out of every part of this dresser. You can see on the drawer front there the layers of the bent plywood that have separated. I'm going to deal with that later. And on top of the plywood, the drawer fronts are covered with a very thin layer of veneer, and it's not a high quality veneer. I already know at this point that I want to remove it. Plus I have to deal with how gross these are, so this is what I decided to do. And again, do not attempt this unless you know exactly what you're doing. If you've got pressed wood or chipboard in your drawers and don't realize it, you could ruin them. If you've got veneer and you're not sure that you have veneer, you could ruin it. In this case, I want to remove the veneer, and the water here is actually going to help me do that. The only reason I opted to do something this drastic is because these were so terrible that I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to save it. This was literally a last resort. But I got the water on, got it off. I tried to dry it as much as I could with a shop towel immediately after spraying it, and then these sat out in the sun for a good few hours to completely dry out. So as I mentioned a minute or so ago, I really wanted to remove the veneer off of these curved drawer fronts. It's a very thin layer. It's not any sort of valuable wood. At this point thought, because that's normally the case, that under this on all four drawers would be the same type of plywood, and I was wrong. As I'm stripping these off, I'm discovering that there's actually 3 types of wood on the curved drawers, and I was not expecting that. This is just how it goes sometimes. So at this point in my journey here, I'm thinking that I might want to take this in a bit of an industrial direction, which is not something I would normally pair with mid-century, really, but it's just kind of the way this is playing out. Now, this dresser is not entirely faced with veneer. The curved drawers were bent plywood layers with veneer on top. The top and sides of both dressers is laminate. It has a solid wood frame, and the flat face drawers are solid wood. So it's a little mishmash of everything. It's kind of unusual in a way. I'm using a 120 grit sand pad to take off this sort of outer layer here on the drawers, and because it had a bit of a smell, I'm opting to sand the entire drawer. I'm doing this to remove the outer layer of material, and I will reseal the drawers once everything is stained and ready to go. So front, back, top, bottom, inside and out, I'm doing every surface on these drawers. As mentioned, these flat-faced drawers are solid wood, so I'm just going right in. It looks like there's veneer here, there's not. So what they've done, because they generally use a lesser quality wood for drawers in situations like this, they sprayed a white primer coat and then they printed on a wood grain instead of just using the real wood. I don't know why they do that, and I complain about it in almost every video I have, but I still don't get it. It's apparent that someone has tried to fix these drawers at one point. It looks like they put some wood glue in the joints here and then drove a few nails in. I'm pulling the nails out. I can't stand nails in dovetails, drives me up the wall. And the glue was strong enough there to hold. I also need to repair these areas where the bent plywood layers have separated, so I'm pushing as much wood glue in there as I possibly can. I'm just using a little artist brush to really get in there. You could use a glue syringe or something the size of a credit card to push the glue in. I like the brush, it's just personal preference. Once I'm sure that this is loaded up well with glue, I'm going to put a whole bunch of spring clamps on. Try to wipe off as much of the excess glue as possible now, but if I can't get it all, I can always just sand it off later. I'm using a 220 grit sanding pad now on all of the drawers, just to smooth things out in preparation for the stain. One of the curved drawers is elm, and it's absolutely beautiful. Elm has an incredible wood grain. It's almost similar to oak in a way. The other two, I'm not sure. They could be poplar or birch. They're definitely not anything all that valuable. If you've seen any of my other videos in the past, you've seen me use this odor blocking primer many times. It comes in a spray form, and there's also a kind that you can brush on. I'm opting for the spray here just for the inside. You definitely want to be working outside if possible, and also wear a respirator when using any kind of aerosol actually. Yeah, this stuff is pretty potent, so you want to protect your lungs. These masonite or hardboard panels that you see on the back and under laminate coatings, they're notorious for absorbing smell, so I'm spraying the outside as well as the inside. Now, only the long dresser actually came with its original legs. The tall boy had no legs on it at all. One had been broken and the rest were removed at one point. So I'm taking these off. I have a plan for that. I need to reattach 2 of these because they're a little bit loose, and I just want to make sure that everything is nice and strong. So I'm just adding some wood glue, and I'm going to screw these back on and let them harden up and make sure that everything is straight when I'm attaching the screws. A lot of times these wooden leg brackets come loose because people will, when they're moving their furniture, they'll rock it on the tapered legs. Don't ever do that. If you need to move a piece of furniture like this, literally pick it up straight, set it down straight. Don't tip it backwards or tip it to the side. You can really either wreck your legs or the leg bracket. So having a better look at the damage on the top here, you can see the edges are a bit frayed. There's a lot of cracking and crazing and scratches. You've seen me do laminate top dressers many times. I'm going to be attacking this the same way. I need to get everything flat, even if it means sanding down into the substrate a little bit. I'm starting off here with a 120 grit, and I will switch up to 180 grit for final sanding before I apply a sort of primer coat. And you can see the layers here once I sand off that printed wood grain, the layers of the wood frame and then that masonite laminate top. A lot of newbies and even just people selling this kind of furniture online, they get confused by that printed wood grain on the front because it looks like it's literally one piece of wood, and it's not. There's multiple layers there. And I'm using a little bit of dry deck spackle to fill in some of the deeper gouges and holes that I can't sand down through. I like this particular one. It goes on pink and dries white, so it's really easy to tell when it's dry. Thin coats of this stuff is best. If you've got a deep gouge, you want to do it in multiple layers. Always set it up so it's a little bit proud of the surface so that you can sand it down level with the surface. One of the corners of the masonite had pulled apart from the wood frame, so I just added some strong epoxy and clamped that up to dry. And once the spackle has set up, I'm going in, like I said, with 180 grit. This is the final sanding I'm going to do before putting on a top coat. And the reason I'm doing a top coat before I paint is because I've got multiple surfaces here. I've got areas where the printed wood grain is still intact. I have areas where the primer is exposed and a few areas where the substrate, the masonite board, is exposed. So I need to create a uniform surface to paint on, or my paint is going to absorb differently in all these different areas. I'm choosing Minwax Polycrylic to do this. It's water-based, it dries quickly, you can paint over it, and it's self-leveling, so it's going to help smooth all this out. You don't ever want to use any sort of wax or even oils to do this part. You can use an oil-based top coat or even a primer. Keeping in mind with an oil-based top coat, you might need to wait a few days before you paint. So that's another reason I'm choosing this water-based one. It dries super fast. But waxes and some oils, paint isn't going to stick to, so you might be kind of screwing yourself there. While the polycrylic is setting up and drying, it's a great time to quickly sweep up. I don't like painting and doing my sort of final finishes, staining, any of that stuff when there's dust around. I just like everything to be clean. I'm using General Finishes gel stain in the color Nutmeg for the drawer fronts. This color is interesting because it really depends on the wood, well, any stain really, but especially the gel stains depend on the wood that it's going on. Now if I was using Nutmeg on walnut, it would be obviously a nice dark rich color. Because these woods are lighter and a little bit lesser quality, the stain color, no matter how long I leave this on, once I wipe off the excess, is still going to be fairly light. It's going to give me sort of a light to medium color here. Gel stains you generally don't want to leave on as long as a penetrating stain. Usually a couple of minutes is fine. So I'm working in sets of 2. I'll stain 2 drawers, and before I move on to a third, I'll go back and wipe the stain off these 2. And you can see the color here. It's nice, it's warm, but it's definitely not dark. It almost has a little bit of a rustic kind of vibe to it, which is going to play in well with this sort of industrial look I'm going for. And you can see I dropped my rag there. This is why I sweep the floor. I was able to just pick it up, move to a clean spot, and move on. I didn't have to worry about picking up a whole bunch of sanding dust. I'm using Fusion Mineral Paint in the color Coal Black with my Zebra Palm Pro brush here. This is a great example of what Coal Black looks like on a first coat. If you've never used it, and this does throw off some beginners using this color for the first time, it's semi-transparent and it can really throw you when you're expecting black to have like good solid coverage on the first coat. It does not. Some colors by Fusion does, this color doesn't. You pretty much always need 2, possibly even 3 coats, and these brushes that I'm using here, they have very soft bristles, so the streakiness is not caused by thick hard bristles. It's literally just because it's a bit of a semi-transparent color. I did a light 320 grit sanding in between. It helps eliminate brush marks. And you can see on the second coat of Coal Black how much better the coverage is. I love this paint. I'm gonna end up using 3 coats on this just to make sure everything is covered well with a light sanding in between. Only one of these dressers actually came with legs. It was the long dresser, and they're quite short, so what I'm opting to do is switch these out for 8 of these legs, which I salvaged from another set of dressers that sadly could not be saved. Even if I can't use and save a whole piece, I'll try to at least salvage pieces that I can reuse. So I'm going in with a 150 sanding pad. I'm going to strip these legs back down to bare wood and stain them to match the drawers. Do you guys like my Ghostbuster shirt? I picked that up at a thrift shop a couple weeks ago. A lot of people think I'm a lot younger than I am. I was actually born a long time ago. We'll say that. I was already a few years old when Ghostbusters came out in the 80s. And here's where things are at. Everything is outside in the warm, dry air. It's not humid today for once. Willow's here to say hello, and I'm gonna move on to doing some repairs on the drawers. Most of the staples have come out from the bottom of the drawers, and it's time to seal the drawers. So as you remember, I sanded everything inside and out. I have to seal this again, or it leaves it vulnerable to absorbing stains and odors, and plus it just looks so much better. So I'm using Wise Owl Furniture Salve in the scent Lemon Verbena. It smells so good. It does a great job of sealing and protecting the wood. color of cedar. Cedar is absolutely beautiful. Speaking of beautiful wood grain, this is the elm drawer I was talking about, and you can see how different the wood grain is from all the other drawers. I so wish that all of the drawers had this wood grain. It's stunning. I'm using the Fusion beeswax and hemp oil mix to seal all of the drawers as well as over top of the paint. Now here's a problem I hadn't anticipated with the legs. These are the new legs. The old legs would have gone through this little screw piece. The bolts, the threads aren't long enough on these new legs to screw into the old spot. So I had to sort of improvise. I have these leg brackets that I bought from Amazon, and I'm gonna have to use these screwed into it. You can't just screw into it or you're gonna split the wood, so I ended up pre-drilling the holes, screwing them in, and then the legs then screw into that. Definitely not what I had wanted for this piece, but sometimes you have to improvise. Things don't always go as planned. I absolutely love the original hardware that came with this piece, but it's not solid brass, it's only plated, it's quite tarnished. I've cleaned them up and I'm going to be spraying them black, and this is also going to sort of go along with that industrial look that I'm going for. Always do a little test spray before you start spraying your hardware. Sometimes it comes out in clumps and you don't want that going onto your hardware. When it comes to using spray paint on metal hardware like this, thin coats are always better than thicker coats, so I'm actually going to be doing several thin coats. Well, it wasn't looking good for these two dressers. They almost didn't make it to my house. I did what I could to save them. I had to sort of improvise a little bit along the way, but overall I am so happy to have been able to spare these from the landfill. Don't forget to subscribe if you like content like this. Thank you so much for watching. Let's have a look at these dressers now.